I got fired over Zoom, not in private, not even with an ounce of dignity. Nope, right in front of 84 coworkers and somebody's barking dog. Name's Ryan, I'm 38. I live outside St. Louis, Missouri. Been in industrial compliance for 16 years, never once written up. Never late, never sloppy. But all it took was one smug, nepotism-hatched little snake to light the fuse. Karen, the new HR lead, was barely 30, fresh from some Ivy League business school, and plopped into her role thanks to her daddy, the CFO. She came in acting like she invented workplace policy. Second week in, she started sniffing around old expense reports like she was hunting for buried treasure. That's when she found mine. It was a Thursday morning Zoom call. Mandatory. Title read, Quarterly Process Update. Standard stuff, usually. But this time, her screen pops up and boom, she's got my expense report pulled up in front of everyone. $1,046. Flights, hotel, rental car. Her voice had that tight, fake polite bite as she said, "We have a compliance concern to address. This employee submitted travel expenses for a trip that was never authorized by HR." She didn't say my name at first, just kept talking like it was a training video. Then she highlighted my name in bright yellow and said, "Ryan Miles, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Quick note, before we go on, share which city or country you're watching from." I swear I could hear jaws drop through the speakers. Someone's dog barked in the background. No one knew what to say, not even my boss. He just stared at his camera like he didn't exist anymore. Karen leaned in, grinning like she just exposed a terrorist. "Falsifying expense reports is a form of corporate fraud," she said. "This is being documented for internal legal purposes." I didn't flinch, didn't beg. I unmuted, leaned toward my laptop, and said, "You might want to double-check those receipts before 9 a.m. Then I logged off, just like that. But here's what that smug little brat didn't realize. That trip? It wasn't some random joyride. It was a scheduled inspection, a federal one. If that audit wasn't filed properly, the entire supply network gets frozen. Not fined, frozen. No shipments, no revenue, nothing. She thought she made an example out of me. Thought she embarrassed me in front of 84 people and a barking dog. What she really did, she pulled the pin. I shut the laptop, stood up, and realized my hands weren't even shaking. It hit me right then. Karen had no clue what she'd just done. I wasn't some random desk jockey patting Miles. I was the one guy in that entire company who actually walked the floor. Steel toe boots, clipboard, earplugs in, heat blasting from welders while I watched pipe seams and pressure gauges like my life depended on it. Because it kinda did. My job wasn't sexy, wasn't public, but I kept us out of federal courtrooms. Every trip I took was logged against the compliance calendar, and every single report was signed, time-stamped, double-authenticated, and filed under a schedule the Department of Regulatory Compliance could pull in under 30 seconds. The trip that got me canned, Indiana, welding plant. Place already had 2 federal citations in the past 18 months. One more, and the plant would have been flagged for review, shutdown pending. And guess who found that 3rd issue? Me. I caught it, documented it, verified the correction, took pictures, logged site signatures, booked the return flight the same night. Karen never saw any of that. She saw a Marriott and a rental car and thought she cracked a fraud case. That receipt she blasted on screen like she was breaking news? It wasn't a dinner tab. It was the federal verification of our compliance. The very one that kept that Indiana plant breathing. HR still had visibility before the expense uploaded, and their delay meant the file hadn't been pushed through yet. They fired me mid-process. So, the only person holding that final legally binding audit doc? Me. I stood in my kitchen, made coffee, and cracked open my inbox, filtered to drafts. The report was sitting there, waiting. Photos, signatures, coordinates, every page clean, locked, certified. All I had to do was hit send. I hovered for a second. Not because I was nervous, because I wanted the timing to hit just right. CC'd legal, CC'd Karen, CC'd the HR general inbox. Added her daddy, the CFO, for flavor. Subject line, final audit file, Indiana Site 9, compliance cert. Karen thought she embarrassed me. Fired me on Zoom like I was some broke scammer trying to game the system. What she didn't know, That little stunt cut our company off from one of the few things standing between federal partner and suspended operations. She didn't just fire me. She deleted the only user credential linked to those inspections, which meant the system, ours and the feds, no longer had an active compliance officer on file. And the audit, the one tied to my name, my badge, my timestamp, it was officially missing. She yanked the plug, thinking she shut me down, but I had the whole fuse in my hand, and I just lit it. The fuse burned fast. By the next morning at exactly 8:45, my phone buzzed. Not a call, an automated alert from the old company's compliance server. I still had my personal notifications turned on. Subject line, compliance file missing, Indiana Site 9. There it was, the first crack. I sat up in bed and watched the rest unfold in real time like a slow-motion car wreck. 15 minutes later, 9 on the dot, the system tripped. Shipping froze company-wide, not delayed, not slowed, frozen. Every truck in their network needed that inspection. I hadn't uploaded before Karen canned me. Without it, the whole logistics chain went from green to blood red. Dispatch screens shut down. Drivers got locked out of routes. The dashboards turned into error messages. And all of it hit right as people were settling in with their first cup of coffee. By 9:05, notifications were flooding my phone like rain on a tin roof. I didn't open a single one, just let them stack. At the office, though, panic spread faster than a grease fire. Karen tried to cover her tracks first. She went straight for the Zoom recording of the meeting she used to fire me. Word got around quick. She logged into the admin panel, tried to delete the file, and ran straight into a firewall. IT had locked down all Zoom deletions after that finance department mess last quarter. No one could touch recordings anymore. Everything was auto-archived with full audit logs. She couldn't bury a thing. Legal was the next to scramble. They started pulling timestamps, cross-checking system logs, trying to figure out why a federally scheduled inspection had no paperwork attached. And then they saw it. My termination timestamp, 11:08 the previous morning, lined up exactly with the window the audit was supposed to be uploaded. Someone in their department sent a message across the internal chat. Why was our compliance officer removed during a scheduled federal audit? That one text hit every exec's screen. It didn't take long before they checked the federal database. Nothing was there. No audit, no verification, no signature. It looked like the company had just ghosted one of the most critical inspections on their roster. Compliance turned red across the board. Not yellow, red. And red meant shutdown. Then came my favorite part. A logistics manager, some guy named Trevor, who'd never said 2 words to me in person, apparently shouted across the floor, "Did we just shut down our own operations?" Right there, out loud, in front of half the department. Yeah, Trevor, you did. Or, more accurately, Karen did. Live, on Zoom, in HD, with 84 witnesses and a barking dog. The legal team huddled into a conference room and dragged in Karen, her face already blotchy, hair pulled back like she'd run the whole way. Someone had the meeting recording queued up, ready to review frame by frame. It didn't take long. On screen, she laid out my so-called fraudulent expenses, highlighted them like some sort of crime scene, and then announced my termination with that smug little smile. Silence. Cold, choking silence. Meanwhile, the system kept tripping, more plants flagging, more shipments held, drivers calling dispatch wondering why their routes were dead, customers asking why orders were delayed, and the federal portal still showed one big gaping hole where the Indiana inspection should have been. I didn't have to lift a finger. I didn't have to make a phone call. All I did was sip my coffee at home while every domino Karen knocked over hit the next one hard enough to shake the whole building. But the best part? The morning wasn't even half over. I watched the clock hit 9:22, put my cup in the sink, grabbed my keys, and stepped out the door to see what blew up next. By the time I pulled out of my driveway, the texts stopped. Not because things calmed down, because no one had time to look at their phones anymore. They tossed in Doug from ops to handle it. I knew Doug, nice guy, played fantasy football. Zero clue how compliance worked. But he was the guy standing closest to Karen when the roof caved in, so they shoved him toward the fire and hoped for a miracle. First thing he did, tried logging into the federal portal to upload a new inspection file. It rejected him instantly. Tried again. Rejected. Tried using an override code. Locked out. Because Doug didn't have a badge. No credentials. No audit signature on record. The portal didn't just block him, it flagged the attempts as unauthorized. System read it like someone trying to forge a report. Meanwhile, Marcy from legal started pulling the thread that unraveled everything. She was smart, sharp, didn't like me much, but she always respected the process. And this time, she followed it straight to hell. She ran a credential trace across all 3 compliance zones tied to that week's inspections. One name came back across the board. Mine, Ryan Miles. Active credential, federal cert, direct upload authority. And guess what else she found? 6 months ago, I'd sent a company-wide memo laying this all out. Subject line, credential consolidation, urgent compliance advisory. Explained exactly what would happen if only one person held the credential, and that person got fired mid-inspection. I wrote the protocol, attached the warning, CC'd legal, ops, HR, Karen, bolded, time-stamped, high priority. Marcy opened the email, read it out loud in the war room. Everyone just sat there listening like they were hearing a gun cock. Karen tried to play dumb. I get hundreds of emails a day, she said. I can't be expected to read everyone. Marcy didn't even blink. You were on the CC line. You were warned. Then came the part that lit the whole boardroom on fire. Karen's daddy, the CFO, walked in looking like someone had dropped a toaster in his bathtub. No tie, eyes bloodshot, face white. He said, "Someone please tell me this is fixable." Marcy turned the monitor toward him. "You fired her only credentialed auditor mid-inspection." He blinked. "What?" Then they hit play. Zoom recording, full screen, full volume. The room went dead quiet. Karen, sitting there like a prosecutor, pulled up my expense report, highlighted it. Voice all clean and smug as she said, "You are terminated for fraud." Then came my voice, calm, cold, me looking right into the camera. "You'll want to verify those receipts before 9 a.m. Someone paused the recording, rewound, played it again. Same words, same timestamp, same ending. Then Marcy brought the hammer down. That receipt, that was the federal compliance record. He hadn't uploaded it yet because our approval system held it, and she terminated him before release. The CFO sat down like he couldn't feel his legs. Jesus! Karen tried to spin it again. But it wasn't properly submitted. HR never approved it. He didn't send the trip to us first. Marcy didn't raise her voice. She just leaned forward and said, "That's because your department had the final sign-off. It was your delay and your deletion." Silence again. Then the room exploded, everyone trying to fix it at once. Legal making calls, ops flipping through their playbook, someone screaming down the hall for IT to check credential backups. Nothing worked. Karen's little stunt had cut the cord, live, and the entire system knew it. The CFO finally muttered, "We need to reach out to him, ask him to release the file." Nobody answered, because there was nothing left to do. The system wasn't broken. It worked exactly the way I designed it. And now, it was crashing back on them with every step they took. The moment no one wanted finally hit. At 11:03 sharp, the Department of Regulatory Compliance called the main line. Not a secretary, not an assistant. A federal auditor, one of the stone-faced types who never wasted a syllable. They asked the first question straight. "Why are your inspections not logged?" Karen was the one who picked up. She tried to steady her voice, but everyone in that room heard it crack. "There must be a misunderstanding," she said. "We're working through—" The auditor cut her off. "Which employee handled the Indiana inspection scheduled yesterday?" Silence. Karen glanced at legal. Legal stared at the floor. Nobody spoke. The auditor let the quiet stretch. Then, "Our system shows a removal of your credentialed compliance officer at 11:08. Is that correct?" More silence. No excuses, no explanations. Finally, Karen whispered, "Yes." "Why was he terminated mid-inspection?" That question hit like a hammer. No one dared answer. The auditor waited a beat, and when no one spoke, they said, "We will follow up," then hung up. No anger, no threat. Just that cold government calm that told you they already had the facts. They only called to see if anyone would lie. A minute later, my email hit their inboxes like a blast. Receipts, photos, signatures, confirmation codes, all attached for reference, not an official portal upload. And at the top, an excerpt from the legal transcript of my termination, time-stamped right in the middle of the federally scheduled inspection. They fired me at the exact moment the audit should have been logged. Karen's name was right on the transcript, the company logo stamped next to every line. The building smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. They'd been trying to hire a compliance lead for months. Soon as word leaked, I was free. They pulled the trigger. Same role, same badge, same authority. Only difference? They actually knew what they were doing. IT logged me into their credential chain before noon. Full access, clean slate. My name popped up in the federal system under a new company within 30 seconds. I completed the separate Indiana inspection, already scheduled for my new employer. Clean, certified, uploaded without a hitch. Certified it clean. Audit passed without a hiccup. While they were drowning in shutdown notices, my new company's dashboard glowed green across every compliance zone. And my old shop, their shipments were still frozen. Hundreds of thousands of dollars bleeding by the hour. Their biggest contract, the crown jewel they bragged about every quarterly meeting, was suddenly being reevaluated by the client. Reevaluated to who? To us. I sat at my new desk, watched their status lights flicker red on the public portal, and waited for the moment everyone knew was coming. They wanted an example. Karen gave them one, and I moved on. I didn't even have to guess when the defense contract team called. My new manager, Kelly, leaned over my desk around 1:30, holding her phone like it was radioactive. They just called us and your old employer at the same time. Them? I asked, but I already knew. She nodded. They saw the portal. The compliance portal was public-facing for federal contractors. Anyone with a login could pull audit status, inspector ID, and credential history in seconds. And when they did, it told a pretty simple story. One company showed 3 zones flagged red. Missing audits, missing credentials, frozen shipments. The other, clean, certified. Audit passed by Ryan Miles. I didn't need to gloat. The numbers did it for me. By 4 p.m., my old company got dropped from the short list. No warning, no call, just a quiet email thanking them for their time and confirming the bid review had concluded. The email went straight to legal, Karen, and her dad. Kelly stood in the hallway reading the portal metrics out loud. Looks like their profile got flagged for non-compliance. Hold accounts under audit. Then marketing got involved. That's when it really went public. Someone in our media team found an old press photo of me from 3 years ago. Me in steel toes and a yellow vest, standing next to a compliance board that read, Trusted Compliance Officer. I remembered the shoot. I didn't even want to do it. Looked like a guy who hated being in front of the camera, because I did. They paired it with a new screenshot. Me again, same badge, different company. Audit signed off and live on the portal. They dropped a caption under the side-by-side that just read, He didn't leave, he got promoted. No hashtags, no names, no call-outs. Didn't need any, people knew, and the ones who didn't, the comment section handled that. I watched the post go up on LinkedIn, and within an hour it was getting picked up by logistics trade pages and compliance groups like wildfire. Hundreds of likes, shares, DMs. Nobody mentioned Karen's name directly, but her fingerprints were all over the wreckage. The phrase, fired your only credentialed officer mid-inspection, started floating around like it was a running joke. Even my new IT guy, who barely knew me, walked by and said, Hey, heard you came with a free defense contract. Not bad for your first week. I just laughed. All I did was my job. But deep down, I knew exactly what I did. And Karen, she knew too. She lit the fire. And now the whole building was burning behind her. At 9 a.m., sharp they closed the doors to the boardroom. Phones off. Curtains drawn. Everyone seated. Karen showed up late. No makeup. Eyes bloodshot. Hair pulled into a knot like she'd yanked it back on the elevator ride up. She took the open seat closest to the wall, tried to shrink into it, but all eyes were already on her. They didn't waste time. Legal turned to the ops director. What time was the federal inspection logged in the internal schedule? He flipped a printed page forward. 11:08, Indiana site. Silence. Then the CFO turned to Karen, pale as drywall. You fired him during a logged federal inspection? Karen's voice cracked. He didn't notify HR of the trip. Legal didn't wait. He didn't need to. It was in the compliance system, scheduled, approved, tied to his badge. Karen blinked fast, trying to form something, but nothing came out. The room stayed quiet until the speakerphone lit up. Incoming call, regulatory line, ops hit the button. This is operations. A woman's voice, steady and clinical. Can someone confirm why your company removed its only credentialed compliance officer mid-inspection? Nobody spoke. You could hear someone's chair creak in the silence. The line disconnected. Right then, the inbox notification dinged, one by one, across every laptop in the room. Subject: compliance transfer, Redbridge Solutions. My name, my signature. Attached was a PDF of the receipts. Final cert, time-stamped, verified, filed under a new credential. Me. Karen stared at the screen. Didn't click anything. Just hovered her hand over the mouse, fingers twitching. The CFO leaned back in his chair. Who promoted Karen? That was the question. Not what went wrong, not how to fix it. Who gave her power? No one answered. Karen didn't speak. Couldn't. Her silence said everything. The board sat in it. Sat in the wreckage she made. Sat in the fallout of $1 million contract. Lost because she wanted to play cop in front of a webcam. They never said my name out loud. They didn't have to. It was already burned into every screen, every file, every flagged audit on their server. A watermark they couldn't erase. Question: would you have sent the final receipts if you were in my position? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more wild stories.